Hello, I just wanted to give a quick teaching video on a study strategy that I think is very useful. It's something that we use with our face-to-face students quite often, and it's a great way to synthesize a great deal of information, see how ideas are connected together, and find a way to synthesize material in a way that's manageable, that can be incorporated into long-term memory. Of course, I don't need to tell you guys how much information you're responsible for Bio 30, but certainly utilizing some of these strategies like flowcharts is a great way to manage the amount of information and get some repetitions in with paper to pen in order, like I say, to incorporate that into long-term memory. So I just wanted to go really quickly. This endocrine system unit 2 works really well with flowcharts. You can see how ideas are connected together, and again, you can really synthesize the material. So I just wanted to kind of go through the steps that you may want to utilize in order to be able to do these flowcharts when you're studying for your midterm and your final unit exams and that, and give it a go. Just see how it works, and I think you'll have lots of success with it. So really quickly, let's just kind of model a way to utilize these flowcharts. So of course we're talking about the endocrine system. We said with the endocrine system you have the hypothalamus. And I'm going to abbreviate. I encourage you to do the abbreviations as well, and you can get a lot more repetitions in there. So the hypothalamus, we said, branches out into, and it's going to stimulate two of the pituitary glands. But of course we know we have a posterior pituitary, and we'll abbreviate it as PIT. Let's put a little box around this. And then, of course, the other one is the anterior pituitary. Now, we could do this in a fancy graphic kind of format, but I'll tell you the value of this is paper to pen. Getting in as many repetitions as it takes before you start incorporating these concepts into long-term memory. A lot of students always say, this stuff just isn't sticking. I'm not getting it. It's not staying in my brain. It's too much. This is a great strategy for those students that struggle with those type of problems. So the hypothalamus, we know that this is a nerve impulse that stimulates the posterior pituitary. And we know with the anterior pituitary, we know this is either a releasing hormone, or if we're talking about negative feedback, an inhibiting hormone. Okay, so this is part of the endocrine system that we talked about. This guy makes, you can put a little adjustments, you can put additional notes in here. This guy makes its own hormones. And this one only stores. So what we're doing is we're taking multiple concepts from many different pages of your notes, and we're trying to incorporate this all on one sheet of paper. We're not going to do the whole flowchart here because this would be too long of a video, but we're just trying to get you to get started on this, and then you can start building your own. Now, each unit does have a synthesized flowchart for the whole unit. You're welcome to use that, but again, the value of that is rewriting it yourself multiple times in order to get that into long-term memory. So we know that the posterior pituitary releases two hormones, okay? One of them being ADH. ADH, we know, targets the kidney, and the kidney reabsorbs more water, and that rehydrates the body. Now you can actually put in negative feedback in here with the dotted lines like we did in a previous video, but just for in this intensive purposes, we're just going to try to keep it just to the standard mechanism that these hormones, who they target, what they release, and what action that has on the body. So the other one, of course, is oxytocin. Okay, oxytocin targets two things. Okay, one of them is the uterus. And you see how we're synthesizing this material, right? We're not putting in all the additional stuff. If you need additional stuff in there, like targets, pop it in there. But after a while, your brain will recognize what it's going to target. So, of course, that's the uterus. What does the uterus do? That contracts, causes the uterus to contract, and that helps or aids in birth. Okay, just abbreviated. The other one, of course, is mammary glands. And abbreviate all this stuff. That causes, in this case, milk flow. Now, The best way to do this with these flowcharts, don't write them from start to finish. What you want to do is you want to chunk the information up. So what you might want to do is say, this is, a manageable chunk right here. If I do any more, I'm not going to remember this stuff. So what you might want to do is rewrite this component, right? Hypothalamus, nerve, releasing hormone, anterior pituitary, posterior pituitary, then break that up into ADH. Now, if that's too big of a chunk, all of this, just do the ADH part. Posterior pituitary, ADH, kidney. Now, you might have to rewrite that several times. But do it a few times, and after a while, by the last time, you're not going to have to look at that, the original sheet to be able to memorize this. It's going to start being, like I say, incorporated into long-term memory. Then do the oxytocin part, right? Oxytocin, uterus, contractions for birth, mammary glands for milk flow. And chunk it up into manageable bits, because that's exactly how your brain incorporates millions of bits of information. It doesn't do it from one big file, just like your emails. If you have emails, one big file, it's going to take you forever to retrieve that information. But if you break it up into, let's say, your Bio 30 emails, your personal emails, right, your math emails, now when you go to that particular file, you can find that and retrieve that information much quicker. That's how our brain compartmentalizes so much information. So that's what you're doing when you bunch this up or break this up into manageable chunks. It's called chunking. It's an actual concept that they study, and they see the effectiveness of long-term memory when you can chunk this information into manageable bits. And then the anterior pituitary, again, I'm not going to do all of these, but we're just going to take a look at a couple of them. Let's just do, and I like to put this purposefully right beside oxytocin, but we know prolactin, because it targets the same thing, mammary glands. Okay, and number these guys, so you remember the numbers. So we know there's only 2 that we discussed for the posterior pituitary, 7 that we discussed with the anterior pituitary. So prolactin targets the mammary glands. This is for milk production, right? Prolactin starts with the P, so does production. Use that as a tool to not get it mixed up with oxytocin. And then really quickly, we can do any of these other ones here. So we can do, let's say, number 2, TSH. TSH targets the thyroid. Thyroid gland releases 2 things. One of them, of course, is thyroxine. And this one has to do with increased metabolism. Burn that energy or that glucose quicker to get that ATP energy for fight or flight or something like that. The other one we talked about was calcitonin. And this one has to do with blood calcium levels. Okay? And this is what we'd want to do to reduce it. Okay, so this is a quick little flow chart. I'm not going to go through all of them, but of course I think there was 7 different anterior pituitary hormones. Chunking up into little bits. Use this little flow chart to get lots of repetition. Summarize some of the notes in that. Get lots of repetitions. Chunk the information up. And this is probably one of the nicest or one of the most effective ways of looking at how ideas connect to each other. You can visually see the difference now between the posterior and the anterior pituitary. You can see how ideas are connected together. You can see that ADH and oxytocin both have, what they both have in common is it's the posterior pituitary that stores them, right? So you can see how things are similar. You can see how ideas are connected together. You can also see some visual differences. And the idea is to get this all on one page so you can see how all of the ideas connect to each other. Okay, so again, this is one strategy. Give it a shot. If you need some more help with it, just contact me through email, and we can go over it a little bit more. But this is, I think, something that you'll find very effective. Okay, thank you.